Stuart, thank you so much for being with me today.
It's good to be here.
I'm excited.
Thank you.
I always feel like I need to say at the beginning, I'm not here as the chancellor, okay? So I'm not asking you for something other than would you do an interview with me?
Yeah.
I'm here as a former scholar of leadership. I used to teach it in the business school and study it. And I'm just still trying to learn from other people who are leaders.
That's great.
So I want to talk about leadership,
Yeah,
okay?
that's
the
great.
deal. All right.
Perfect.
So I want to start with who in your life you think most influenced you in wanting to become a leader and in the qualities you possess as a
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for doing this and having me participate in this. These are fun. I've watched many of these,
Okay,
and
good.
glad you're doing them.
Yeah.
And thanks for what you do for the state and the university as well. So I've got several people in my life
Okay.
that I credit that question to, and that first and foremost is my dad. He was very much a part of my life, obviously, as my dad, but
Right.
through my career, he and I had our own business together, and just somebody that he mentored so many people
Right.
As well, but to be a son and to have just that ability to learn from him was a huge thing for me. But early on, I would say too, I played high school sports, and my coach in football, the head coach, was somebody that poured into not just me, but many of us. You know, and when you're an athlete and you have coaches that
Right.
do that and spend time with your development as a young, adult.
Yeah.
That had a big impact on me as well. And I think as I've gotten older, my dad passed away in 2016 and had that void. But somebody who really was a friend first and foremost, but who I've really admired from a leadership perspective is the governor, Governor Lee. And he's just been a remarkable leader of our state, and the ability to be around him and serve in the capacity that I've been able to serve as commissioner, as deputy governor, and just to see him in action and the things that he's dealt with and how he's led in that capacity has been inspiring, really, for me. And I've learned a lot from him. Even at the age of 57, I'm still learning from him, and that's a great blessing to me.
Yeah. You've had more than a front row seat. I mean, you're right in there.
Yeah.
I assume you see how he thinks and how he processes things, that kind of
Right.
thing. How do you use that in what you do? I mean, how have you seen that roll out in your leadership?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that was recently learned. I think for me and watching him do it, it just is confirming.
Yeah.
But when we think about what we do here at ECD, we're about bringing industry and jobs to the state, really good paying jobs. And what we do in a very similar way is we think about that employee, that person that's going to have the opportunity they may not have had otherwise.
Right.
It's a good skilled wage job, and the impact it may have to that particular person or the family could be meaningful.
Yeah.
And we really do try to focus on that. We can talk about all the statistics and the number of jobs created and the CapEx these companies are investing in our state, which are all really good. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to know how it impacts an individual, a family, a community, and even businesses around the community, just from those types of things that we are, so fortunate to be involved in at economic development.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's keep going a little bit with your biography. So when was the first time you thought of yourself as maybe I could be a leader, or maybe I am a leader?
Yeah, I don't know if all of a sudden I said, I'm a leader, but it's, evolved over time.
Yeah.
You get so fortunate to be put in opportunities where you're finding yourself, these are some serious decisions. It's going to impact a lot of people. And, you got to be very thoughtful about decisions you make and things that lead up to those decisions. But I think about, I know we've probably talked about this before, but I was the mascot at Clemson. I was the tiger. And
Was it supposed to be a secret all the time you were there? Like, could you not tell anyone you had that job?
A little bit.
Okay.
You couldn't talk. You couldn't take the head off of it and say, "Hey, it's me." You couldn't do that. So people didn't really know, but a few people did. But I say all that to say that with the responsibilities that come with being a university mascot, you have to show up on places, places on time.
Right.
You have to be accountable for your
Right.
actions. You can get a little loose in those things, and do things that you might regret. You can't do that.
That's right. You're representing.
You're
Clemson.
representing. You're the
Yeah.
ambassador.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so for me, 18, 19, 20 years old, I was out running around doing that and did it for 2 years. And it taught me a lot about responsibility, accountability, and you're meeting a lot of people outside of the suit. You're meeting very influential people who support the university. And that to me was sort of the beginning of this journey around leadership. But I would also say too, my dad and I had a venture capital company. We
Okay.
participated in that together for 20 years.
I've always thought about that industry or that business and doing it like you and your dad did, saying other people join us. We're investing our own money, and essentially you're saying we'll invest your money like we are ours.
That's right.
That require a huge amount of trust.
It does.
So did you have the trust with people first? They must have had a little bit of trust in you, but then just talk about the trust thing.
Sure.
How does it build? How easy is it to lose it?
Yeah, it could take years and decades to build that up. And to your point, it could take days and weeks, perhaps, to have all of that destroyed.
Yeah.
And, that's why in our business, in the venture capital industry that we were in, and the firm that we built, the funds that we raised and invested out of, we never took that for granted. We realized in our work, it's a people business, high level of trust.
Yeah.
We got to communicate, over communicate, very transparent in all the things that we were doing, which really has translated, nicely into the work that I'm doing today.
Right.
Same principles,
Right.
that apply to this job. And because otherwise, there's so many other opportunities for people to invest in venture funds.
Right.
But you have to be unique in a lot of different ways. And that was one of the ways that we did that, is just our ability to relate to the investor, bring them into deals that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. We had great success along the way, thankfully.
Yeah.
And it was a great run. Dad and I did that for 20 years together, and it was a fun time
How special.
to do. It was great.
So let me ask you, let's say after you were, so being the mascot at Clemson was transformational for you in some really cool ways. And so next in your journey, can you think of some early leadership experiences that changed you or that taught you things that were really, you would say, that also transformed me as a leader?
Well, I think one of the things that was really interesting and along my journey was, I was talking about Bill Lee for a minute, but I've known the governor for over 20 years now. We met early 2000s and developed a relationship mostly through the business community and through philanthropic initiatives. Found myself in the same room with him around nonprofits. Found that he and I had a very similar view of where our heart was with regards to nonprofits and supporting groups and agencies. But along the way, he started talking about running for governor. And it was early on, and I thought he was kind of lost his mind, thinking he's got a third generation business that he's the CEO of and it's doing very well, and why would you want to do that? But fast forward, he decides to run, and he asks me to serve as his finance chair for the campaign. And my first
job.
reaction was, it's like, I could think of 3 or 4 other people that could do that better than me, I know. And there's some really good people out there that have the network and the ability.
Yeah.
And he's like, you got to do this.
Aw.
And so I took a leap of faith in a way
Yeah.
with him, not because I didn't believe he could do it. It was because I wasn't sure of myself.
Right,
And here's a candidate who nobody knows.
right.
And at the time, obviously, 4 Republican primary candidates that had a much broader statewide recognition, the name. And here's little Bill Lee over here.
Yeah.
And just didn't think that we could raise the money and do what we needed to do. But, we were able to raise enough.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of work. I had to go out to a lot of my friends and say,
Yeah.
I need your help. And, that for me, just to take that leap of faith for myself, was a big deal. And, it really sort of set the stage for so many other things that has happened since then. That was, 8 or 9 years ago now. that has led me to this point
Yeah.
in time and to do the things that I've been able to do, even as, serving in this role with the state or for the state. But that to me was a pivotal moment
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
in my career.
Well, one of the things I wanted to pursue with you just a little bit is you've worked in private industry, you've worked in, now you're public service, you're working for the state, the government. Are those anything alike, or just talk to me a little bit about that? Because people ask me that frequently. I never worked in corporate America, but
Right.
I was a business dean and I was getting kids jobs in corporate America.
Sure.
So how do you think about that?
It's a people business.
That's right.
Private, public sector, it's all about the people. It's all about stewarding resources, in the best way possible. We have over 7 million Tennesseans in our state, and our view here is that those are our shareholders, those are our stakeholders,
Right.
and no different than the private sector and what we've talked about with those that invest their dollars with us. And so there are things that very, very different, but obviously very similar. One of the things that I love about what I do here and spending 20 years in the venture business is that we have to view opportunities through a certain lens and a certain filter. And so we grant dollars, state taxpayer dollars to these projects that are promising jobs and investment. And if they don't perform, we have what is called an accountability agreement that they sign. And if they don't hit their numbers over a certain period of time, by this accountability agreement, they have to pay back some portion, and in some cases, all of it back if they don't hit their
Of the
numbers
incentives they got.
of the incentives. And so
I think the public doesn't know that.
I don't think they
that's
do as much. You're right.
That's important.
It is important because we, oftentimes will get the question of why are we giving out taxpayer dollars for these things? Well, these projects are creating jobs, and that's what we're tasked to do, is create new jobs in our state. But guess what? If they don't perform based on the agreement,
Yeah.
it's mutually agreed upon, they are, by virtue of that agreement, they have to, pay back a portion of those dollars.
So how do you go about making decisions about where you want to use state resources to make investments? Like there's all these communities across the state are so different.
They are.
And they probably all want new jobs. And so how do you think about that? Do they all land in Nashville? I know the answer is no to that. But
Yeah, no, they don't. And, I would say, to your point, we have 95 counties
Right.
and 95 different definitions of what economic development
Yeah.
means to them. And we put almost all of our attention to the local communities and counties. Tell us what it is that make your community thrive.
Right.
It's going to be very different than your neighbor.
Yeah.
There may be some similarities, but we recognize that the local communities know what they need, what works for them. And some are really good. They'll say, hey, we can take a project that with no more than 100 new jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we can do. And okay, well, we'll focus on opportunities that fit that. We're not going to come in and say, we hear what you said, but we have a 500 job opportunity for you.
Yeah.
They'll tell you all the reasons why that may not work. Usually it's around workforce or infrastructure. There's some challenges there,
Right.
and they recognize that. But ultimately, it's from the bottom up, and it's grassroots. We have, in our department, we have representatives across the entire state in 9 different districts or regions. And so they are the boots on the ground for us. They're talking to the county mayors, city mayors, the chambers of commerces, all of the groups that really provide that information. And that's really how we focus our efforts. If you look at industry, there's probably 10 or 12 clusters that we have focused on over the last couple decades.
Right.
And so that tends to sort of channel into those industry focuses. But on the other side, outside of just the large business development projects, the work that we do in our communities, we do a lot of work with grants that we provide to the local downtowns just to help lift up, and help them rebuild and invest in infrastructure to provide, resources locally for the small businesses and for communities. As we've had out of the 95 counties, like 85% population growth across those counties. So what we do in these small towns matters too. They're all different, but you know what? We can't be successful without our partnership at the local level.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about partnering with the university. And of course, I'm thinking of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, but universities, higher education in general as well. Like, why is that? I'm assuming it's important to you. I think it is. Why is it? And how do you think we're doing right now?
Yeah, it's very important. And I think our department's relationship with University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and really all the universities across the state has been really good. When I got here almost 4 years ago, we really weren't focusing on research and development and really how we could connect these global brands that are in our state, called Tennessee home, and investing in our state.
Right.
We weren't really connecting the dots with higher education in particular. And so I started focusing on that. And we had a study that was done several years ago that compared Tennessee to other states in terms of the corporate R&D spend, what companies were actually spending in states for their research and development. Tennessee was ranking toward the bottom of that. And so our view collectively was, you know what, there's something we can do about this because, you know, as a department and in the role that I get to play in this, and fortunate to have, is I have, you know, discussions with the CEOs of these companies. Right. And we visit companies, CEOs all over the globe. Yeah. And the simple question is, what do you do with your R&D? Where are you doing it? Yeah. And why aren't you doing it in our state? Yeah. And when you have those conversations, you'll quickly come to realize that, you know, most of the time they just don't know. Yeah. They don't know what's here. Yeah. That hasn't been the focus, at least at the C-suite. Now, somebody on their team does know, right, and they'll tell you all the things. Right. But our point of view is you're spending a lot of money in our state. You're hiring great Tennesseans, a great workforce, but you also are spending your dollars on how to perfect your product or service. And we want you to think about doing it here in Tennessee. And so what I've spent the last 3 years doing is educating myself on the things that are happening in Knoxville. Right. Or in Cookeville, or wherever, Memphis, and really immersing myself in understanding what it is going on so that we're talking to these CEOs, I can actually have a conversation with them and try to make those connections. So since then, we've rolled out a few grant projects that have been great, matching industry with higher education in particular. Right. And, you know, we're looking at doing things where you're thinking about how, you know, you've got, historically for us, we call these industrial sites, shovel-ready industrial sites. Right. You know, one of the things that I think is really important, we've talked about this, is how do we then consider what same concept of industrial sites would make them R&D sites, shovel-ready research and development sites close to the researchers and the assets that are there. Proximity makes a difference. And so we believe there's just opportunity. And I know for you, you know, research dollars matter. Right. You know, whether it's federal dollars or if it's coming from companies. So we want to be able to bring the resources and really connect the dots for universities to allow them to grow that, because I know it's important. It is. And to engage faculty and engage researchers with industry.
Well, you've mentioned the connection between nuclear and AI, which I think a lot of people don't realize. Yeah. Like, why is that relationship there? But can you talk a little bit about if our state succeeds at being recognized as the leader in nuclear for this country? And when you hear Governor Lee talk about it, he kind of talks about it that way. Right. What would we be doing? What would it look like for us to be like Tennessee? Nuclear is Tennessee.
Yeah, the great thing is it's kind of happening. Yeah. We are now, we just got recently of the last, I think it was early this year, ranked #1 state in the country with regards to nuclear energy development. That has everything to do with Oak Ridge. You know, it's decades of a community that understands and appreciates the nuances of nuclear. Right. I think a lot of companies that we talk to that look at, you know, other locations around the country will tell us that the difference between Tennessee and other states is that there's a community that understands it. They've got a workforce around it, and they understand how to build a workforce, you know, for the future. So we are now really starting to look at the entire supply chain ecosystem of nuclear, whether it's enrichment, whether it's, you know, components. It's a vast array of businesses in new nuclear. Some are emerging even right now as we talk about it. But what's prompting and what's accelerating a lot of that is the fact that the federal government, and with this administration, particularly with Secretary Wright, Department of Energy, somebody who understands that what we're doing in nuclear is the future
Right.
of not just energy independence, but it's really about forward thinking about from a national security perspective. And we're at the ground zero of that.
Yeah.
And the projects we've announced over the last 2 years is an indicator of that. But, the federal government is now looking very heavily at creating these nuclear innovation hubs and campuses around the country. And we believe we're well positioned
Yeah.
for that. You talk about the capital investment, the jobs.
Oh,
It's going to transform our state, but certainly it's going to transform East Tennessee. It's going to be a great opportunity for the university.
huge for us.
I'm really excited about it. But that's really what it is. The governor, he recognized several years ago we have this opportunity. He set some dollars aside in the
Yes.
budget. Thankfully, the legislature's been extremely supportive of it. And we've been able to do a lot with not a lot of capital and money to get it going because we've had Oak Ridge.
Right.
We're not having to create anything
That's
from
right.
scratch. So
That's
it's
right.
we're really on a rocket here, and
It's leveraging a strength we already had.
that's exactly right.
Okay, I want to circle back to the topic of leadership. How do you, Stuart McWhorter, define success as a leader? And I guess maybe you could think, how do you want to be thought of as in terms of your success as a leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as you do this long enough and start to get reflective, ultimately for me, it's about how you impact other people. I think about the long-term impact on individuals. It's, did you give folks an opportunity to grow in their career? Did you give them, opportunities to, meet other people that could help further either a career or a personal development component to it? I think that to me is one of I hope that I'm, if there's anything retrospective about, the things I've done is how did I impact others?
Yeah.
Because that's how I view people who have poured into me.
Yeah.
That's what I look at. And, if they've impacted me in a positive way, I would say that's a compliment to their ability to engage and lead and impact myself as well as many others. So that's just probably the way I look at it, ultimately.
Impacting others.
Yeah.
So recently we started a school, not a center, the Howard Baker School of Public Policy and Public Affairs. And we've got actually a lot of young people who are majoring as undergraduates thinking in our undergraduate program, I want to go into public service. What would you say to them? Like, if you could say anything to these young people who think, I want to serve.
Right.
Why
Yeah.
do that? What's in it for them?
I think, ultimately, I think you want to do it because you feel called to serve, because serving is not for everybody.
Right.
Especially in public service.
Right.
It's a different industry. It requires, I think, sort of a different type of discipline, but ultimately you're going to be wired in a way that just is who you are.
Yeah.
And I would encourage it. I think, one of the greatest, opportunities I've had in my life is doing what I'm doing. I went about it a much different way.
Right.
I think it's benefited what I do today to go the route I have to get
Right.
here. But I think anybody who has aspirations to serve our state or serve any state or any government for that matter, hats off to it, because we need good people.
Yeah.
We need good people to lean in on public policy, to think about the benefit of a community or a state or our country. And the better, the better we can
Yeah.
identify and train and provide the resources and tools for those individuals to go out in the world and change it. I applaud, and I'm glad y'all are doing that.
Well, it's exciting. Some days when I think about, there's so many problems, I go out and talk to undergraduates, and I feel like, the future's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's good.
These are good people,
good.
and our future's in good hands.
Well, we
Thank
need
you
it.
for doing this with me today.
Absolutely, it's been
Appreciate
fun.
it so much.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
been great. Thank you.